Hi, I'm Jacob Gallucci, and today I'd like to talk about the first Chicago Bears game that I went to. It was actually a preseason game. It was in August of 1997. It was a Sunday night game against the Arizona Cardinals, August 17th, 1997, and the Bears won that game 22-10. But believe it or not, that game was actually supposed to be played the day before on Saturday, August 16th, but there was a huge rainstorm that night. It's definitely one of the 5 worst rainstorms I've ever seen. It was pouring that night, so they moved the game to Sunday the 17th, and the Bears ended up winning that night. Excuse me. When I was 9 at the time, and it was shortly before I started 4th grade. And I went to a couple of regular season games in 1997, and the Bears sucked that year. They were 4-12, and they actually started the year 0-7, and then at one point they were 1-10. 1-10. That year they scored 263 points, and they gave up 421 points. 421 points, yes. It's still the Bears' record for most points ever given up in one season by any Bears team in their entire history. And that was the year Rick Mirer was the quarterback. Mirer sucked. He was awful. Just really bad. And among the other Bear games I went to that year, I went to the home opener in Week 2. It was September 7th, 1997 against the Minnesota Vikings. The Bears were leading in that game in the fourth quarter, 24-20. But unfortunately, the Vikings came back and beat us near the end of the game, and we lost 27-24. Then my next Bears game was Week 7 on October 12th, 1997 against Green Bay. The Bears lost that game 24-23, and you may remember that game. That was the game where Dave Wanstead went for 2. That bonehead went for 2. We were down 24-17. We got a late touchdown pass. I want to say, it was a touchdown pass from Eric Kramer. Instead of kicking the extra point like we should have, that idiot Wanstead went for 2, and we didn't get it, and we lost that game 24-23. And that play, I would say, was the epitome of Wanstead as the Bears head coach. The guy was an idiot, just an absolute idiot. At that point, we had not beaten the Green Bay Packers since 1993. 1993. It had been 4 years at that point. After losing to Green Bay that week, the Bears were 0-7. 0-7. And the week before, the Bears played the New Orleans Saints on October 5th. It was a Sunday night game, and I was going to go that night, but I couldn't because it was a night game, and I was too young. I was only 9, and it was past my bedtime, and my dad actually went instead. And that was actually Mike Ditka's first of 2 games back in Chicago after he left the Bears. He coached the Saints in 1997, 1998, and in 99 as well, and he was horrible with the Saints. The Saints were just a really bad team, and they were awful back then. And the Bears lost that game against the Saints 20-17. The Bears were winning that game 17-13, and they were winning that game 17-13 late in the fourth quarter. Then Heath Schuler, one of the worst quarterbacks of all time, he threw this long touchdown pass, and the Bears lost that game 20-17, and it was embarrassing, and it was just a really bad season. And I actually went to a game in 1998 as well. In 98, I saw the Bears play the Vikings again, and it was Week 4, and the Bears lost that game 31-28. And I was at that game with my dad, and I remember leaving early because we were trying to get home, and the Bears were getting killed at one point. I think that at one point the Bears were down 31-14 in that game, and the Bears were never really in that game. The final score was a lot closer than the game would indicate, definitely. And the Bears were awful back then. They really were just piss poor. And my next Bears game was in 2001 against the Green Bay Packers. In the past 2 weeks before then, they had won those games in overtime against the 49ers and the Browns. Those were unbelievable games. We came from behind in both games and we won. And Mike Brown had the pick six in both games. It was insane. In back-to-back weeks, he had pick sixes in overtime. It was unbelievable. It was so exciting. And I went to that Bears game against Green Bay. It was October. No, my mistake. It was November 11th, 2001. The Bears lost that game 20-12, and it was a relatively exciting game, but we ended up losing it. And believe it or not, that was the last Bears game I would go to until 2011. 2011, yes. I didn't go to Soldier Field at all for 10 years after that. And my next Bears game was actually in November of 2011 against the Detroit Lions. That game was played on, it was November 13th, 2011. The Bears killed the Lions that day, 37-13. It was really an exciting game, and that was my first game at Soldier Field since the stadium was fixed. I hadn't been to a Bears game in 10 years. The reason being, I guess, is because, well, tickets are expensive, and the team was bad for a long time, and I was young when they became good again in 05 and 06. I was young. I was still in high school, and I was going into college, and I really didn't have a desire to go to a Bears game back then. I preferred watching them on TV. To this day, I still prefer watching the Bears on TV. It's a better experience than going to Soldier Field. It's hard to get there, and it's tough to get around. You can easily get lost over there, but it's still fun to go to like, I'd say at least probably 1 or 2 games a year maybe. But I actually went to another Bears game this past season. It was against the Carolina Panthers, and hang on, I have the information here. The Bears won that game 23-22. It was really exciting, and it was just unbelievable. And it was on October 28th of this past year, and I actually left the game before the Bears came back. It was early in the fourth quarter. I thought the game was over. I didn't think the Bears had a chance, and I was fed up because the Bears played so poorly that day until the fourth quarter. And it was still an exciting game, though. It was fun to go, and it was really windy that day. I remember the game against Detroit in 2011. It wasn't that bad. It was really nice out. It really was. The game against Carolina was really windy, and it was really breezy the whole game. And it's a shame the Bears collapsed this year. It was embarrassing, but I'm hoping for more success in 2013, and I'll try to go to at least 1, maybe 2 games this year. It depends who the Bears are playing, though, and it should be exciting. I mean, once again, I prefer watching the games on TV, but it's still fun to go to the game. It's cool to be in person occasionally, I guess. But yeah, whatever. Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow with 2 new videos, and until then, take care.